The Zelthari High Council gathered in their ancient chamber, a room that had witnessed 10,000 years of galactic decisions. High Councilor Vrax stood at the center, his forearms trembling with barely controlled rage. The holographic displays around him showed numbers that should have been impossible. Red indicators flashed everywhere. The Intergalactic Trade Consortium, an economic union of 47 species that had controlled galactic commerce for 3 millennia, was dying. And it was all because of the humans. Just 50 standard cycles ago, humanity had stumbled into the galactic community. Their primitive ships had barely managed to reach the outer trading posts. The Consortium had laughed at them. These small, soft creatures from a violent little world seemed like easy prey. The elder races had expected to absorb them, to use their labor and resources as they had done with countless species before. No one was laughing now. Merchant Krill of the Voxen Trade Federation remembered the first human trader he ever met. The man called himself Marcus Chun, and he had arrived at Krill Station with nothing but a single cargo hold full of something the humans called coffee. Krill had examined the strange brown beans with confusion. What possible value could dried plant seeds have? Marcus had smiled that unsettling human smile and suggested they make a drink together. Within one rotation, Krill was addicted. So was his entire crew. So was the neighboring station. Within 10 rotations, coffee had spread across 3 star systems. The humans controlled every bean. They set the prices, and those prices kept climbing. This pattern repeated across the galaxy. The humans seemed to understand something fundamental about trade that the elder races had never grasped. They called it market psychology. They studied not just what other species needed, but what they wanted, what they dreamed about, what they feared. Ambassador Telex of the Mantari hegemony had written extensively about the human invasion of the entertainment sector. Her reports were now required reading in every Consortium academy. The humans had arrived with their movies and music and games. They were strange art forms, filled with emotion and spectacle that alien minds found both confusing and irresistible. The Mantari had dominated entertainment for 2,000 years. Their crystalline light sculptures and mathematical poetry were considered the height of galactic culture. Then the humans released something called an action movie. Within one cycle, Mantari crystal sales dropped by 60%. Within 5 cycles, the ancient Mantari studios were bankrupt. Telex had interviewed captured human entertainers, trying to understand their secret. One producer had shrugged and said something that haunted her dreams. "We've been competing for attention for thousands of years on our little planet. Billions of us, all fighting to be noticed. You guys never had that pressure. You got comfortable. We never could." The economic warfare spread to every sector. Human engineers began selling their services to any species willing to pay. They worked faster than the Consortium standard. They worked cheaper, and somehow, their solutions were always slightly better. When the Galactic Engineering Guild complained, the humans simply started their own guild. They called it open source engineering and gave away basic designs for free. This seemed insane to alien economists. How could you profit by giving things away? The answer became clear within 20 cycles. The free designs created dependency. Species that adopted human engineering standards found themselves locked into human supply chains. Replacement parts, upgrades, and advanced components all came from Terran factories. The old engineering guilds watched their customers disappear one by one. Financial Minister Gorth of the Krethian Empire had spent his entire career managing interstellar currency exchanges. The Consortium credit had been the standard galactic currency since before his great-grandfather was born. It was backed by the combined economic power of 47 civilizations. It was stable. It was trusted. It was eternal. The humans looked at this ancient system and found it ridiculous. They introduced something called cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. Gorth still did not fully understand these concepts, but he understood their effects. Young traders across the galaxy began abandoning Consortium credits for human digital tokens. The value of these tokens swung wildly, creating massive profits for those who understood the patterns. The humans always seemed to understand the patterns. Within 30 cycles, 15% of galactic trade was conducted in human currencies. The Consortium credit began to weaken. Gorth's warnings were ignored by the High Council. They still believed this was a temporary phase. They still believed the humans could be controlled. General Thrax of the Unified Military Command had advocated for a different solution: military intervention. The humans were clearly dangerous. Their economic weapons were destroying galactic stability. A quick strike against their homeworld would end this threat forever. The Council had actually approved his plan. 3 battle fleets had been assembled. 12,000 warships from 8 species, prepared to teach humanity its place in the galactic order. The humans responded by leaking the invasion plans to every news network in the galaxy. They also leaked detailed economic analyses showing how much trade each Consortium member conducted with Terran merchants. The Voxans suddenly realized that 40% of their food supply came from human agricultural colonies. The Montari discovered that 60% of their young consumed human entertainment daily. The Krethians found that their entire banking system was now dependent on human trading algorithms. The battle fleets never launched. Species that had agreed to war suddenly refused to participate. The economic cost was too high. The humans had made themselves essential. Trade Representative Sarah Okonkwo addressed the galactic community shortly after the failed invasion attempt. She stood before the assembled ambassadors with the calm confidence that humans always seem to possess. She spoke about mutual prosperity and free market principles and win-win relationships. The alien delegates listened with growing dread. The humans did not want to destroy the Consortium. They wanted to transform it. They wanted to remake galactic civilization in their own image, and they were succeeding. The Zelthari had been the founders of the Consortium. For 3,000 years, they had controlled its highest positions. They had set the rules that governed interstellar trade. They had grown wealthy beyond imagination. Now, they watched as human merchants purchased their oldest trading houses. Human investors acquired their most valuable assets. Human consultants arrived to teach them how to compete in the new economy. The teachers had become the students. High Counselor Vrax had resisted longer than most. He had refused to allow human businesses on Zelthari worlds. He had banned human currencies. He had blocked human entertainment. For a time, this isolation seemed to work. Then his own people began to rebel. Young Zelthari smuggled human goods through the blockade. Black markets flourished. The banned products became symbols of freedom and modernity. When Vrax tried to crack down, protests erupted in every major city. His own nephew was arrested for operating an illegal coffeehouse. The counselor finally understood what the humans had done. They had not conquered the galaxy through force or threats. They had conquered it through desire. They had made alien species want human things, need human things, crave human things. And once that craving existed, no government could stop it. The final blow came from an unexpected direction. Human universities began offering education to young aliens from across the galaxy. These schools taught subjects that Consortium academies had never considered: marketing, entrepreneurship, innovation, risk management. The alien students returned to their homeworlds with human ideas in their minds and human methods in their hearts. Within one generation, the character of galactic civilization began to change. The old hierarchies weakened. The ancient traditions faded. New hybrid cultures emerged, blending alien heritage with human dynamism. These cultures traded with each other using human platforms. They entertained themselves with human media. They dreamed human dreams. The Intergalactic Trade Consortium held its final session on a cold morning in the Zelthari capital. Only 12 of the original 47-member species still attended. The others had already joined the new Terran Economic Alliance. High Council of Vrax delivered a brief eulogy for the organization his ancestors had built. He spoke of past glories and ancient traditions. He blamed greed and short-sightedness among the member races. He did not blame the humans. He had come to understand that blaming them was pointless. They had simply been better at the game of trade. They had been hungrier, faster, and more creative. The humans had not cheated. They had not used violence. They had simply competed with everything they had. And in the end, 3,000 years of galactic dominance had crumbled before 50 years of human economic energy. As the final gavel fell, Vrax noticed a human observer sitting quietly in the back of the chamber. The woman was taking notes on a small device. She looked up and met his gaze. For a moment, the ancient alien and the young human stared at each other across the empty seats. Then she smiled and gave him a small business card. It advertised consulting services for species transitioning to Terran economic systems. Her rates were reasonable. Her references were excellent. She had helped 3 former Consortium members already. Vrax held the card for a long time after she left. He was the leader of a dying civilization, and a human stranger had just offered to teach him how to survive in the new galaxy. The worst part was that he would probably accept. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy continued to spin. Human ships carried goods between the stars. Human banks processed trillions of transactions. Human ideas spread through alien minds like seeds in fertile soil. The old order was dying, and no one could stop the change. Somewhere on distant Earth, a young trader was probably dreaming of new markets to conquer, new species to trade with, new products to create. The humans never stopped. They never rested. They always wanted more. And that, Vrax finally understood, was why they had won. The other species had achieved comfort and stopped pushing. The humans had never known comfort. Their violent history, their competitive nature, their endless creativity born from scarcity and conflict, all of these things had forged them into perfect economic warriors. The galaxy had never faced anything like them before. It never would again, because the galaxy now belonged to them. The transition period was painful for many species. Ancient economies restructured themselves around human standards. Proud civilizations learned to speak the language of Terran commerce. Resistance movements flared and faded, unable to compete with the overwhelming tide of human economic influence. Some species adapted quickly. The Voxan, natural traders themselves, became enthusiastic partners in human ventures. They learned coffee cultivation and built their own chains of cafes across the galaxy. Their children studied at human business schools and returned with new strategies for success. Other species struggled. The Montari spent decades in economic depression, unable to accept their fall from cultural dominance. Their artists created bitter masterpieces about human conquest, which ironically became bestsellers in the Terran entertainment market. The humans monetized even the criticism against them. The Crethians tried to maintain their financial independence the longest. Their central banks issued new currencies backed by rare metals and ancient treaties. For a while, these alternatives gained some traction among species resentful of human dominance. But the human financial networks were too deeply embedded. Every major trading hub used Terran payment systems. Every serious investor needed access to human capital markets. One by one, the alternative currencies failed. The Crethian financial minister, who had warned about this outcome, retired in disgrace, though human historians would later credit him as one of the few alien leaders who truly understood what was happening. Decades passed. The children who had grown up drinking coffee and watching human movies became the leaders of their civilizations. They did not remember the old Consortium. They knew only the new economic reality, where humans sat at the center of everything. New species continued to emerge from isolated star systems. They discovered a galaxy transformed by human influence, These newcomers saw nothing strange about Terran dominance. To them, humans had always ruled galactic commerce. The history of the Consortium became a footnote in educational databases. Vrax lived long enough to see his own grandchildren embrace the change. They learned human languages. They partnered with Terran investors. They found success in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. The old High Counselor watched them thrive and felt something he had not expected to feel: pride. His species had survived. They had adapted. They had found their place in the new order. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps survival was its own form of victory. On his final day, Vrax sat in his garden and watched human ships streak across the sky. They were beautiful, he admitted to himself. Fast and efficient and endlessly ambitious. The galaxy was larger than it had been before they arrived. There was more trade, more contact, more possibility. The old ways were gone forever, but maybe the new ways were not so terrible. The humans had changed everything, and yet life continued. Species thrived. Cultures evolved. The universe remained vast and full of wonders. Vrax closed his eyes and let go of his resentment. The humans had won. There was no shame in losing to such formidable opponents. There was only the future, bright and uncertain, shaped by human hands, but belonging to everyone who had the courage to compete within it.